Welcome. This is the Sportscast from the Queen City, and we are your hosts, Steven and Zach, where we talk about the Cincinnati Bengals, the Reds, and anything Cincinnati sports related. Sometimes a little bit of college football as well.
Yes, and I think a good way to start off is since we had such a hot week one in the NFL, I think we just start with the Bengals and, the teams surrounding the Bengals. Since week one, we had the Chiefs playing the Ravens, and that was a really good, first game of the NFL season.
Yeah, so it was a good preview to see what these teams might look like. Obviously, the Chiefs won the game. A very great game by Patrick Mahomes, 20 of 28, 291 with an average of 10.4 yards per pass, um, and a touchdown. He really did show why he's one of the best players in the league still, and one of the MVP frontrunners.
I definitely would agree with that. I would say another person that stuck out in that game is Derrick Henry. I know going into the season, a lot of people were writing him off because of his age, how much he's carried the ball, his workload, and everything. But I think he showed in that Ravens game, just how much he's not gonna let that affect him.
Yeah, he had a somewhat solid game. Um, the biggest question mark coming out of this game is Lamar Jackson going to find that winning play mentality where he's able to make those big plays in clutch time, especially against the Chiefs, where he consistently loses.
I'll be honest with you. I think his main issue that he has is passing. Like he's not a horrible passer, but as you saw where he had Zay Flowers wide open in the end zone, he just overthrew him and it was just an inaccurate pass. I think those are the passes that he's struggling with and that a lot of teams like Cincinnati if they play or when they play against the Ravens, excuse me, they could try to exploit that easily. Just let him have those kind of passes that should be easy, but then he could overthink it and overthrow it.
But even going through this game, him missing Isaiah Likely and missing Zay Flowers, like you said earlier, sometimes it's just so difficult to play at Arrowhead. The Chiefs are just so ex they're just so good. Patrick Mahomes is truly elite. And another standout in that game was Rashee Rice with his end around reverse touchdown, showing off his fastest 40 time in NFL history, showing off the speed
Rasheed
and really
Rice or Xavier Worthy?
Xavier Worthy. My apologies. They both are pretty fast in their own right. But
Yes.
Xavier Worthy, obviously fastest receiver or just fastest player in NFL draft history, really showed off the speed and kind of brought to everyone's attention that the Bills traded that pick to to the Chiefs and allowed them to get another speed receiver that could potentially be the Tyreek Hill replacement this season.
Yes. Yes, he could. I think we should change gears here and talk about what I think a lot of Cincinnati fans, along with myself, were paying the most attention to, which was the Bengals and the Patriots.
Yeah, that was a rough game, but also a week one matchup where pretty much anything is possible. All of the wacky, wonky things are bound to happen. Lots of miscues, lots of chemistry still being worked on. And the Patriots, behind a veteran backup, or I guess just a veteran starting quarterback, Jacoby Brissett, who has shown to have the ability to win some football games. He really kind of showcased that there with a couple of winning plays, especially on second down, third down, scrambling to get first downs, and also Ramondre Stevenson carrying the workload on the ground.
Yeah, you named two guys that I think the Bengals defense seriously struggled against. And in my personal opinion, this is my opinion about it. I think the defense really struggled in this game. The offense was slow, but they've had this type of slow start every week one that since Joe Burrow's been there is just a slow start. It happens, like you said, chemistry. They had just brought in Zach Moss. Chase Brown is now the guy. They've got Yoshi. They've got Mike Gesicki. They've got different players that they've never had before. So offense being slow, I didn't have any expectations of them coming out and firing right away. But defense, on the other hand, I was surprised at the amount of miscues and just the amount of gash plays that they let up. I know we don't have DJ Reader, but it's still the same contained guys and linebackers from the same amount of years that we've been producing very well on defense. The only changes are two cornerbacks. I was blown away by the defense's miscues.
You also have new s- a new like back line with Geno Stone, Von Bell coming back. Those two guys, they're gonna have to work on their chemistry. And I think the I think Tyquan Thornton from the Patriots might have a little bit of a breakout year. I saw him flash a little bit of the footwork. I know that he's a downfield deep threat receiver, but he showed some good route running, and I think that gave some of the Cincinnati Bengals defensive backs some trouble. I don't think they were expecting the level of route running from the Patriots receivers.
Yes, I could agree with that. And I'll get to the elephant in the room. I think the main issue that the Bengals had was two major fumbles. The one that I have a big issue with is Tanner Hudson. Now, I love Tanner Hudson to death. He was a great call up from the practice squad to the main roster. He made a great impact for us. But I think on that play, you're a big tight end. You got to catch the ball and you can't do a swim move with the football. And again, it could have just been reactionary thing. If you're a tight end, you just got to catch it, bring it into your chest and just both arms over the football and just truck your way into the end zone.
I did see a tweet um saying from Tanner Hudson, he just didn't realize that there was people around him, and even then, that's still unacceptable, especially as a as a playmaker. You're supposed to make plays for your quarterback. You can't be fumbling the ball. Turnovers are a massive killer, especially in week one, or pretty much in any NFL game. You lose games by not winning the turnover battle. And the Bengals lost the turnover battle yesterday. And if they can't correct these mistakes before Sunday, they're going to have a rough game against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in Arrowhead.
I do agree. The other fumble I would say that Charlie Jones had, I would not be upset at Charlie Jones about it. That was the textbook football tackle that every defensive coach is coaching the defensive players or any coach, to be honest with you, when they're teaching these guys on special teams and everything to tackle, that is the way that they're teaching them to tackle. And you got to see that on Charlie Jones. Should he have had two hands on the ball? Sure, you can say that, but he's he's trying to make a play on a punt. He's not expecting the long snapper to come in with a form tackle. The form tackle was picture perfect. Like, there's nothing more you can say about that.
Yes, and one of the things that Dan Orlovsky even brought up is that the Bengals just weren't physical. They they just didn't display any type of physical football at all against the Patriots. It seemed to like they were playing with finesse, by his words. And sometimes it's a grown man's league. You're gonna have to play physical football. I understand that football as a I guess a Bengals fan, you're kind of used to seeing a little bit of the you kind of wowed by the flash, but sometimes you forget that the interior offensive line and the defensive line, those two those are the two areas where you have to show your physicality, especially from the tackle spot where I thought they struggled a little bit against the Patriots, especially without Matthew Judon, who was traded to the Falcons early in the offseason.
Yeah. I definitely agree. There, the only person that I saw that had any type of physicality to him was Zach Moss on the runs that he had. He was the only person I saw. He did have times where he was finesse, but the times where he had to go north and south, he was a physical runner. Up front, I would agree. There it just didn't seem like there was any pop from the pads up front, really. Um, I didn't get a chance to watch Ted Karras at all, but I would assume he would be one of the main ones that was getting a pop on pads. And, that's just as a former offensive lineman, you've got to get pop on pads and you've got to be aggressive up front.
I also think that the offensive line not really being able to, I guess, provide enough time for Joe Burrow. He didn't pass very far. Most of his passes were 5 yards or even closer. They
His
just
average was 5.7, yeah.
he just wasn't push. He wasn't able to push the ball downfield. You could see it by um Jamar Chase really only having about 62 yards, even though he was sick and needing an IV after the game.
And funny you mentioned that name. I heard it a lot during the broadcast. Jamar Chase's contract. The commentators, Charles Davis, had brought it up a couple times about how that could have affected some of the play, and I could see it where, Jamar Chase is upset after the game. He won't show it in any of the press conference or anything, but you can see in his facial expressions and everything like that. He wants a deal done. Every Cincinnati Bengal fan wants him to be the highest paid receiver, all of that. It's just a matter of how and when that contract comes to be, because if you're going to have Jamar Chase, who is top three receiver in the league, what, why are you only getting him six targets? I know I understand that he may have been sick and needed IVs, but he's still your best receiver. You've got to try and get him more than six targets. And I don't want to, go at Zach Taylor, but it just seems like an issue. You only targeted him six times, and your new tight end, Mike Gesicki, who I think all of Cincinnati was excited to have. You gave him three targets, and he only got 18 yards, and he was supposed to be a big kind of playmaker and big help to your offense, but you only targeted him three times. That's where I have issues is, Jamar Chase may have had the most targets, but you know, you've got to try and if Jamar Chase isn't getting it done, you've got to try and find a second person, whether that be Yoshivas or Gasecki. Got to find someone else.
Unfortunately, T. Higgins was out with a injury. I do wonder if he will be able to play on Sunday against the Chiefs. But speaking about Chase and his contract situation, um, I think part of it is that the Bengals just don't want to pay him this year. They want to take that extra year and take that extra year and not having to pay him that 30 plus $1 million a year. Even though I don't think that's personally the right way to do it, I think they should have paid him. He's still got 2 more years on his deal, so he's pretty much stuck. having to really play out that year. I don't think that Mike Brown is making a smart decision by pretty much letting this contract situation linger over this whole season, especially after you pretty much said, T. Higgins, we're not going to pay you. We're using this money for Jamar Chase, and you still don't get a deal done.
Yeah, and I think the main issue that I think the front office has run into is, as you said, Mike Brown. I'm sure Katie Blackburn and Duke Tobin have been working their behinds off trying to get something done. But as you said, Mike Brown just has to be stubborn about some things. So, I think if anyone is able to get something done, I'm putting my faith in Katie Blackbird and Duke Tobin, the two people that have pretty much, gone and basically gave us the team that we have now. I'm putting my faith into those two and saying, you guys got it. Am I upset a deal's not done? Yes, but I think you two will ultimately be able to get something done, whether that be, like talking to Jamar and getting him to, maybe understand a little more what's going on, even though I'm sure he understands just fine. Um, I just think those two are two of the front office people that the players really have some kind of trust and understanding with.
Pivoting from that, let's talk about the Reds and their recent games and also Rhett Lauder's second start.
Rhett Lauder looked very good in his second start, I will say. He went 6 innings, only 4 hits, no runs, 3 strikeouts on a 0.87 ERA for his 6 innings. He's looking really good so far.
I do want him to cut back on the four walks. He did have four walks in his first start as well. He's a rookie, so that's to be expected, especially going up against big league hitters who are they know the mental aspects of the game. They know that these rookies, there's not a whole lot of tape on them, and they're always looking for an opportunity to take advantage of some rookie mistakes.
Yes, I will say, he looked to be kind of timid, and I'll be honest, I put that on the fact that the only other start he had was 4 innings. He wasn't in the game long. It may not have even been 4 innings. I understand David Bell just wanted him to get a taste in his first start, but you've got to leave him in a little longer than just 3 or 4 innings, I feel. You got to let him get some innings under himself so he can get some confidence. Whereas now he's in his second game, 6 innings pitched, as opposed to the three before, 3 or 4 from his first start. 4 walks in this game is just, he didn't see many batters in his first start. And this time he's seeing more batters, so he may have a little more tired, a little more gas is going out of the engine. That's just my take on it.
He had a really nice start in the second start. The first start was pretty decent for the first start. Four innings, uh, not super long, not super short, especially in today's era of baseball where everyone is going maybe 5 innings, sometimes six. There's not a lot of uh pitchers going beyond 6 or 7, which is a little bit unfortunate for my liking. I like to see a little bit of the starting pitcher going 8, 9 innings, 8, 7, 8 innings, maybe a ninth if they're really wheeling and dealing for a complete game shutout. But it's pretty par for the course for today's pitchers. Um, they played pretty well against Houston, which they swept, which I was a little bit surprised
Which,
about, but there was also a stat that that the Astros haven't beaten the Reds in a decent amount of time. So that's a
We're
funny
also
stat.
talking about an Astros team that was first in their division, right? Or still is.
They're
And
a very good team. They are number one in the AL West with 77 wins
we're
and
talking about
66 losses.
A Reds team that seems to only get wins against those type of ball clubs.
Yes, they.
It's kind of rough. You can't go out there and sweep a team like the Astros or the Yankees and then drop a game to say the Tigers or the uh any other lower team or someone that's not top of the standings. You've got to beat every team no matter what. You've got to treat them all as if they're top of the barrel.
Well, right now they're playing. Well, they lost. Well, they're playing against the Braves in a makeup game today. They just lost a series against the Mets, and they have a series against St. Louis. And after that, Minnesota, and then another series against Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and then Chicago. I'm not sure how strong they'll finish, uh, given how far they are behind in the division and in the wild card. So I don't know if they're going to mail it in. Maybe because they're young players, they might call up a few people.
I really could see that. Just call them up to let them get a taste, you know. But uh, I just this team can be frustrating at times. But then you've got bright spots like a guy like Ty France you bring in from the trade deadline, who's brought a great spark to this team. I think that was the one thing that they were missing was a guy like Ty France, you know, an experienced guy, experienced first baseman who, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he was 9 for 11.
Yes, he was 9 for 11 in that Astro series.
And
He
I think
really
that's
was
the
hitting
highest
very
batting
well.
average for the Reds since like the 1900s or something like that I saw.
It was an insane stat, to say the least. I did not expect a stat to go all the way back to like back in the day. Um, Ty France has really just been a very stable right-handed bat. Um, he's not a superstar by any means, but just a great solid bat in the lineup for David Bell. I do think that um this team needs a little bit of juice. Whether it's from a new call up or I don't know if a new manager might be in order. I am not too sure about David Bell. I think he's okay, but I don't know if the current team is really rallying behind him.
Yeah, I don't like to put a lot of things on head coaches or managers or anything like that, but from what we've seen with the Reds, there's just things that he does that is kind of questionable. You know, he'll have bullpen days, and yes, sure you can have bullpen days, but you know the timing of bullpen days kind of just is questionable at some points. Um, and then you've got some of the time when he doesn't, you know, seem to be all there. Like he's just kind of just taking the season in, and that's that. Like, there's times where he's had passion, and I haven't seen that passion in what seems to be a month, maybe two.
I think he's given up a little bit. Obviously, this team's had horrible luck when it comes to injuries.
Yes.
An untimely suspension by Noel Marte at the beginning of the season, missing pretty much half the season. This team is just, they're so exciting, but also so frustrating at the same time because you could see the potential of what this team could be, and you consistently see the high spots, the low spots, and I understand that they're a young team. They have to find some level of consistency, whether it's Matt McClain coming back and providing that spark once again like he did last year, being pretty much the Reds' best rookie last year. He was honestly he might have been the best player on the Reds last year, period. I know that Ellie De La Cruz is the superstar of the team, but
Ellie,
Matt
let's make
McClain
one
was
thing
the
clear.
guy.
Ellie is Ellie.
Ellie is Ellie, but Matt McClain was just in general the best baseball player on this team last year. And I
Yes.
don't think there was any question that his impact on this team was massive. I think all of this happened. His injury really shook up the lineup, the defensive alignment. It really pushed Jonathan India back into that second base spot where he was actually training to play at other positions other than second base, and it just really hampered down this team. And the fact that we can't find a stable outfield alignment is it's been very bad. TJ Friedel's been in and out of the lineup because of injury. Will Benton has been struggling. Jake Fraley has been doing all right. He's struggled at times, but he's also had some other things, weighing on him. Um, Stuart Fairchild being good defensively, not great offensively. I also think that this team just doesn't have enough juice coming out of maybe some of the more veteran players, especially with injuries, kind of pushing our starting pitching to the absolute limit with Hunter Green being injured, Nick Lodolo being injured, Graham Ashcraft struggling, and we're having to put our fifth, fourth, fifth, and like minor league pitching having to be called up all the time. I think it's really been a struggle season for this Reds. It's kind of like a classic Cincinnati season, unfortunately.
All right, so next year we get Matt McClain back. What are you doing with India? Where are you playing him?
I can see him playing left field, honestly. I think he could play left field. I think he has the athleticism to play left field, just like Spencer Steer has the athleticism to play left field. I also foresee maybe Spencer Steer moving to third base or Jonathan India playing third. Doesn't really matter. I do think that Santiago Espinal has been really good lately. Um, but from just a talent perspective, I think that they could honestly put Jonathan India there. He can also DH a little bit. I don't think that it's the end all be all that you have to trade him. I do think
I would
that the
agree.
I do think that the infield is very packed with young players and young talent, and we're still looking for an everyday outfield outfielder.
And one last thing to touch on India. What are your thoughts on him getting second all-time Reds franchise leadoff home runs?
I think that's an interesting stat. I did not hear about that, but I think him being in the leadoff spot and Ellie being right behind them provides a really nice 1-2 punch. It seems very aggressive, and I really like that, especially since I know that when Jonathan India is at his best, it's not hitting the ball for home runs. It's it's just hitting the ball for contact, letting the ball land where it lands, no matter if it's shallow left, shallow right, shallow center right, just finding some open patch of grass. and letting him just mash the ball, and then having Ellie come right behind him, providing a burst of speed, home run potential. And if they're both on base, one of those guys can just one of the guys, Spencer Steer, Tyler Stevenson, they can drive them in. They've they've been providing all year, or proving all year that they've been pretty solid hitting the baseball, especially with Ellie and Jonathan India on the base paths.
I definitely agree. All right. In the last couple minutes here, let's just touch on some college football. We got a couple minutes, just touch on some of the big college football headlines. The one thing I want to bring up is the Texas-Michigan game where Michigan got, let's just say they got creamed.
Yeah, it was not a very good game. You could tell that Michigan is not a top 10 team, unfortunately. Um, Unfortunate in the way that the big game is always a really strong game, especially for college football. We were expecting a somewhat decent football game. It ended up being a blowout. And it also just showcased the talent from Quinn Ewers and that Texas football team, showing that they are title contenders.
And speaking of quarterback play, if you're an Ohio State fan, how would you feel seeing Kyle McCord go 32 for 46 for 381 yards and four touchdowns?
At Syracuse, yeah,
Yes.
I forgot about that, and it was a little bit surprising when I saw that stat line, and then I'm like, this is the classic Kyle McCord, Kirk Cousins revenge tour.
Well, folks, I
And
believe that is it for our episode today.
yes, thank you, and we will see you next time.
We'll
Bye.
see ya.